Section 52. Janamejaya said, when the high-souled Partha went to Indra's region for obtaining weapons, what did Yudhishthira and the other sons of Pandu do? Vaisampayana said, when the high-souled Partha went to Indra's region for obtaining weapons, those bulls of the Bharata race continued to dwell with Krishna in the woods of Kamyaka. One day, those foremost of the Bharatas, afflicted with grief, were seated with Krishna on a clean and solitary sward, grieving for Dhananjaya. Overwhelmed with sorrow, their voices were choked with weeping. Tortured by Dhananjaya's absence, grief afflicted them equally, and filled with sorrow at their separation from Arjuna and at the loss of their kingdom, the mighty armed Bhima among them addressed Yudhishthira, saying, that bull of the Bharata race, Arjuna, O great king, on whom depend the lives of Pandu's sons, and on whose death the Panchalas, as also ourselves, with our sons and Satyaki and Vasudeva are sure to die, hath gone away at thy behest. What can be sadder than this, that the virtuous Vibatsu hath gone away at thy command, thinking of his many griefs, depending upon the might of that illustrious hero's arms. Regard our foes as already vanquished in battle, and the whole earth itself as already acquired by us. It was for the sake of that mighty warrior that I refrained from sending to the other world all the Dhritarashtras along with the Suvalas in the midst of the assembly, gifted with the might of arms and supported by Vasudeva. We have to suppress the wrath that hath been roused in us, because thou art the root of that wrath. Indeed, with Krishna's help, slaying our foes headed by Karna, we are able to rule the entire earth. Thus conquered by our own arms, endued with manliness, we are yet overwhelmed with calamities in consequence of thy gambling vice, while the foolish sons of Dhritarashtra are growing stronger with the tributes gathered from dependent kings. O mighty monarch, it behoveth thee to keep in view the duties of the Kshatriya. O great king, it is not the duty of a Kshatriya to live in the woods. The wise are of the opinion that rule is the foremost duty of a Kshatriya. O king, thou art conversant with Kshatriya morality. Do not therefore deviate from the path of duty. Turning away from the woods, let us summon Partha and Janardana. Slay, O king, the sons of Dhritarashtra, even before the 12 years are complete. O illustrious monarch, O king of kings, even if these Dhritarashtras be surrounded by soldiers in array of battle, I shall send them to the other world. By dint of might alone, I shall slay all the sons of Dhritarashtra, along with the Suvalas. Indeed, Duryodhana, Karna, and anyone else that will fight with me. And after I shall have slain all our foes, thou mayest come back unto the woods. By acting thus, O king, no fault will be thine, or if any sin be thine, O oppressor of foes, O mighty monarch, washing it off, O sire, by various sacrifices, we may ascend to a superior heaven. Such a consummation may come to pass if our king proveth not unwise or procrastinating. Thou art, however, virtuous. Verily, the deceitful should be destroyed by deceit. To slay the deceitful by deceit is not regarded as sinful. O Bharata, it is also said by those versed in morality that one day and night is, O great prince, equal unto a full year. The Veda text also exalted one is often heard signifying that a year is equivalent to a day when passed in the observance of certain difficult vows. O thou of unfading glory of the Vedas, are not an authority with thee regard thou the period of a day and something more as the equivalent of 13 years. O oppressor of foes, this is the time to slay Duryodhana with his adherents. Else, O king, he will be beforehand bring the whole earth obedient to his will. O foremost of monarchs, all this is a result of thy addiction to gambling. We are on the verge of destruction already, in consequence of thy promise of living 1 year undiscovered. I did not find the country where, if we leave, the wicked-minded Suryodhana may not be able to trace us by his spies. And finding us out, that wretch will again deceitfully send us into such exile in the woods, if that sinful one beholdeth us emerge after the expiry of the pledged period of non-discovery. We will again invite thee, O great king, to dice, and the play will once more begin. Summoned once more, thou will again efface thyself at dice. Thou art not skilled at dice, and when summoned at play, thou will be deprived of thy senses. Therefore, O mighty monarch, thou will have to lead a life in the woods again. If, O mighty king, it behoveth thee not to make us wretched for life, observe thou fully the ordinance of the Vedas, which inculcate that verily the deceitful ought to be slain by deceit. If I but have thy command, I would go to Hastinapura, and even as fire falling upon a heap of grass consumeth it, would slay Duryodhana, putting forth my utmost might. It behoveth thee, therefore, to grant me permission. Vaisampayana continued, thus addressed by Bhima, King Yudhishthira the Just smelt the crown of that son of Pandu, and pacifying him said, O mighty armed one, without doubt thou wilt, assisted by the wielder of the Gandiva, slay Suryodhana at the expiry of the 13th year. But O son of Partha, as for thy assertion, O Lord, the time is complete. I cannot dare tell an untruth, for untruth is not in me. O son of Kunti, without the help of fraud, wilt thou kill the wicked and irrepressible Duryodhana with his allies? While Yudhishthira the Just was speaking unto Bhima thus, there came the great and illustrious Rishi Brihadashva before them, and beholding that virtuous ascetic before him, the righteous king worshipped him according to the ordinance, with the offering of Madhuparka. And when the ascetic was seated and refreshed, the mighty armed Yudhishthira sat by him, and looking up at the former, addressed him thus in exceedingly piteous accents: O Holy One, summoned by cunning gamblers, skilled at dice, I have been deprived of wealth and kingdom through gambling. I am not an adept at white dice, and am unacquainted with deceit. Sinful men by unfair means vanquished me at play. They even brought into the public assembly my wife, dearer unto me than life itself, and defeating me a second time, they have sent me to distressful exile in this great forest, clad in deer skins. At present I am leading a distressful life in the woods in grief of heart. Those harsh and cruel speeches they addressed me on the occasion of that gambling match, and the words of my afflicted friends relating to the match at dice and other subjects are all stored up in my remembrance. Recollecting them, I passed the whole night in sleepless anxiety, deprived also of the company of the illustrious wielder of the Gandiva, on whom depend the lives of us all. I am almost deprived of life. Oh, when shall I see the sweet-speeched and large-hearted Vivatsu, so full of kindness and activity, return to us, having obtained all weapons? Is there a king on this earth who is more unfortunate than myself? Hast thou ever seen or heard of any such before? To my thinking, there is no man more wretched than I am. Brihadasva said, O great king, O son of Pandu, thou sayest there is no person more miserable than I am. O sinless monarch, if thou wilt listen, I will relate unto thee the history of a king more wretched than thyself. Vaisampayana continued, and thereupon the king said unto the ascetic, O illustrious one, tell me, I desire to hear the history of the king who had fallen into such a condition. Rihadasva said, O king, O thou that never fallest off, listen attentively with thy brothers. I will narrate the history of a prince more miserable than thyself. There was a celebrated king among the Nishadas named Veerasena. He had a son named Nala. Versed him the knowledge of virtue and wealth. It hath been heard by us that king was deceitfully defeated by Pushkara and afflicted with calamity. He dwelt in the woods with his spouse. And O king, while he was living in the forest, he had neither slaves nor cars, neither brothers nor friends with him, but thou art surrounded by thy heroic brothers, like unto the celestials, and also by foremost regenerate ones, like unto Brahma himself. Therefore it behoveth thee not to grieve. Yudhishthira said, I am anxious to hear in detail, O thou foremost of eloquent men, the history of the illustrious Nala. It behoveth thee, therefore, to relate it unto me. Thus endeth the 52nd section in the Nalopakhyana Parva of the Vana Parva.